Okay, we're going to set up now our first panel. This is a panel of distinguished community residents from the Johnson Houses community that have been that created and have been producing a community-based podcast called The Wisdom Table. I just wanted to echo something that Greg said. He talked about how large the public housing community is here in New York City. It is indeed as large as the entire state of Vermont. It's as large as the city of Atlanta. And yet, nearly half of the folks in public housing don't have internet connectivity at home. The average income level is, at the poverty level, it's about $24,000. And often what we hear, all that we hear, news coming out of public housing is negative stuff. Well, one of the things that when Doug and I got together with Ethel Velez, who's a public housing leader in Harlem and in East Harlem, we kept hearing that residents needed a way to voice their own concerns, to tell their own story, to put positive information out there. And that's what led to the creation of the Wisdom Table, which you're going to hear from in just a moment. I just also wanted to echo some comments that Gail and President Boudreaux, and that is the divide, the digital divide is not just about connectivity. There's also a divide in terms of who produces the content, the services, and the applications that reside on the internet. And unfortunately, so many Black, Brown, and Latino folks are on the non-owner side and are simply consumers of the internet. So that's one of the things that we are addressing and that the folks at Johnson Houses have addressed in putting together their own content, almost 3 years now up and running. So I'm going to introduce the folks, Brother Leroy, Shirley Stroud, Eva Varnum, Edith Jenkins, and Esther Hyatt. So just give us a minute to set up here, and you're going to hear from them, the Wisdom Table, next. Thanks.
And I'm going to go off video because you've seen enough of me.
Okay, am I on, Mike? I just wanted to introduce our panel once again. From the end, Sister Shirley Stroud, Sister Eva Varnum, Brother Leroy, Sister Edith Jenkins, and Sister Esther Hyatt, the Wisdom Table.
And the way we will do this is the same way we execute our taping on Tuesdays. And the intent of the Wisdom Table is to develop among the senior citizens the ability and the capability to produce and host their own talk show. In addition to that, the idea and the focus of the Wisdom Table is to pull information from the guests for the benefit of the community. So the whole focus is not bickering between one another as you would see on a panel. It's to gain information from the guests. The program that you're about to hear and see is the Wisdom Table, based at the James Weldon Johnson Community Housing Development on 112th Street, 114th Street, and Lexington Avenue. It does not reflect the views, attitudes, whimsies, or any other proclivities of the management of the community center, nor that of the administration of the housing development. However, it does reflect the research done by the participants in the program who are live and live in color, in studio by phone interview, and today by Zoom interview. Our guest online is by way of North Carolina. She's based in Louisiana. She's a medical doctor with a number of degrees behind her name, but most important, she is freely giving of information and direction. So, the panel will ask the first question.
Edith Jenkins. My first question is, why these doctors are trying to push medicine on you that don't really work with your body? And it's like, should I take this medicine? Because it's not really helping, it's damaging my body. So it's like a little puzzle to you. It makes you want to wonder, what is these people doing? Do they really know about medicine? You know, I think I'd rather stay with the old remedy because this new remedy is not working with me. Can you explain something to me, please, Doc?
You got that, Doc?
Yes. One of the things you should know is when you are talking about medicine, much of the medicine, when it is presented to Black American patients, have never been tested on Black American patients. That may sound odd to you, but the testing of medication very often are healthy white males. So when they are telling you that you should take this or take that, there is an element of not really knowing how it's going to work with you. They know how it's designed to work, and it is supposedly active. But if they asked you verbatim, do you know that in fact this is something that will work with you? They can't answer yes to that. They cannot say yes or no. Can you
so
see
Doc,
it?
as a result, the Sister Jenkins has indicated why do they prescribe medicines that really don't work in her particular case for her. It's because it's the test is taking place right there in the doctor's office when the patient comes back and tells the doctor whether it works or not. Is that a summary of what you're saying?
Unfortunately, yes, because the population, I guess I could say it in a better way, the population where pharmaceuticals are tested often do not include the population to which the medicine is prescribed.
Okay. Next question.
Good afternoon, Doctor.
Good afternoon. How are you?
It's a pleasure to see you and hear you again. I want to say that I'm so happy to be a part of the Wisdom Table because I learned things that I overheard in my younger years from my grandmother and it's a pleasure to hear some of my wisdom table mates talking about some of the same things. And then when we meet you, you're saying the same thing our grandparents have said. Mm-hmm. And that's very pleasing to hear things that not really put on a simple level, but she shares things with us that makes us feel better, and we are better. I just want to share with you, you introduced prunes to us, and each morning I've been stewing prunes for my breakfast, and it's a very tasty. It's tasty, and it's good for you, and thank you for that. So I'm sharing this with our community.
Sister Esther, before you go further, what was the circumstance in which she brought up prunes to us?
Okay, help me, partners.
Doc, your instant recall, share with us how that came about in our previous conversation.
Certainly, we were talking about digestion, and we were talking about probiotics and what we can do to make sure we do not get into a problem with leaky gut syndrome. That too often when we eat junk food or food which is not ideally suited for our digestions, and we talked at length that too much of modern food is non food. They put chemicals to preserve it to keep a longer shelf life. Some of the foods that we are consuming, if we are on a low income budget, is not even meant to be food. It is a byproduct of petroleum, and too often it's a synthetic compound. And if you want to recover your body, if you want your body to go back in sync with nature, there are certain things you can do, and the more simple, the better. One of the issues that no one talks about as much as I remember as a child is constipation. That was a very serious situation in my household, and I've referred to often. My mother gave the children castor oil twice a year, and she timed it just before we started school. So we're talking at the end of the summer, and it was just after the holidays. So say January. So we're talking maybe June and January. And now, if you go to your university hospitals, constipation, colon cancer, ulcerative colitis, all of those bowel-related complaints have come down to the presence of probiotics or appropriate bacteria that should be found in the digestive system. We have systematically killed it off by drinking too many carbonated sodas, by eating too much artificial food coloring, artificial foods, too much junk food, and consequently, one of the signs of the bowel not doing what Mother Nature intended is constipation. That if those of you have ever taken care of a child eats and then a child poops, and that happens within 2 hours. Talk to any young mother. If that baby is being fed 6 times a day, okay, you're changing 6 diapers a day. Well, as we mature, we learn how not to instantly reward our body with defecation after eating, but we still should have 2 to 3 bowel movements a day. And some would say, a day? I don't have 2 or 3 bowel movements a week. And when that's the case, we are retaining toxins that were never intended to lay against the colon wall for that length of time, and we are potentiating polyps and potentially colon cancer. Sometimes we get allergens to what we are retaining, and that can result in leaky bowel syndrome, where you have all kinds of aches and pains, digestive problems, reflux. So the discussion that the stewed prunes came out of is what, as a senior citizen, can you take to keep yourself regular and not be cathartic? Because castor oil in an elderly person is a mistake. You want something gentle, you want something natural. And we talked about stewed prunes, we talked about oatmeal and other natural fibers that can help get the body back in sync with Mother Nature and let us answer Mother Nature's call with a smile instead of a groan.
My question is about shingles. Hi, Dr. Bose.
Good afternoon.
What is the first symptoms of shingles? I'm curious.
The very first actually is chicken pox. Shingles is well, first of all, let's say chicken pox is a herpes type virus. Now, everybody hear herpes and they think of cold sores, and unfortunately also now today genital herpes, but there's a family of viruses, and chicken pox is in the family of herpes virus. Why is that important? Herpes virus has a way of hiding out. So if you had chicken pox as a child and you had the eruptions, you itched, you had a fever, and then it dried up and it went away. The truth of the matter is you didn't get cured. The virus just disappeared. And unfortunately for some, the virus hides out in major nerve bundles. And when you get immune compromise, which would mean severe flu symptoms, maybe pneumonia, sometimes aging is enough to cause shingles to come back out. So the virus is present in your body once you're exposed to chickenpox, and it can reappear when you are most vulnerable. So many seniors, say over the age of 60, who are not, their immune system is not as strong as it should be. Maybe they have had a bad cold, they've had a flu, maybe pneumonia, maybe they have diabetes, whatever the compromising condition is, the virus takes the opportunity to come back out. And when it comes out, it now follows the nerve bundles that it hit away in. And that's why people will get eruptions along their rib cage. Some will have it on their thigh. Some will even have it in the face and on the neck. And the reason it shows up where it does, that's letting you know where it was hibernating or hiding out all those years. So shingles is really chickenpox that hid away in your body and reappeared when you were most vulnerable.
Okay, what would be the first thing I would do when I found some of these uh, indicators that you just spoke about? What would I do? The first thing I would do?
Well, I understand shingles is very painful. Unlike the childhood disease chickenpox, which is itchy, shingles are very painful. Some describe it feeling burning, like someone scalded them. Some people have achy pain. There is a vaccine which they recommend for seniors. Its effective rate is not very high. I understand it's between 30 and 40%, but it may give some people some relief. If you were talking to my grandmother, and this is not what I learned at the University of Pittsburgh, but grandmother would say, use parched brown flour to put on the lesions to dry them up. Now, if you're not familiar with parched brown flour, if you've ever made gravy and you start with just plain flour and you put it in the pan and darken it where it starts to look brown and it starts to smell nutty, grandmother used that in a number of conditions that were wet. And shingles, like chickenpox, can give you a wetness, like when a burn has a wetness. The brown flour literally draws the fluid up and kind of gives it a coating, and that can be very soothing. Now, if you're talking Western medicine, they'll tell you calamine lotion. Some may even tell you to get Solacane, which you buy and spray like white Americans would use on a sunburn. So depends on what you feel most comfortable with as far as a remedy, because this is viral. And viruses right now, Western medicine have very poor cure rates for viruses. So some doctors may give you anti-herpes medication, and some people get relief from that. And you can also buy over the counter the fever blister type medication at any drugstore, CVS or the other types. I don't know, the New York brand drugstores, and that can give some relief. But basically, when you're talking a viral infection, we do not have great success for treating viruses. Now, cyclovir, ganciclovir are medicines they
Doc,
may give you.
Dr.
Can you hear?
Bowles, just hold
Yes.
tight. Because of time, we got to go to one more question.
Okay.
But, well, every time we interview Dr. Bowles, it goes into tributaries. And we follow it, but we don't have time to follow it. Sister Shirley?
Dr. Bowles,
Yes,
I would just
ma'am.
like to have one thing. What are some reliefs for lupus?
Relief for what? I didn't hear you.
Lupus.
Oh, lupus. Oh, okay. Well, we've talked a little bit about lupus. Lupus hits the black race harder generally than other groups in America. And there are two different age groups that lupus shows up in. If you're talking 16 to 32 and you're talking black female, that is going to be a horrible result in general. that has the highest incidence of kidney failure and pulmonary failure. And in those two cases, they are aggressive, and sometimes it could be fatal, because even with a renal transplant, few lupus patients in that age range do well. The second category are older, 60 to 65. In this group, it's usually a skin issue where they'll have dry, itchy skin. They may have bald spots. They can also have some kidney problem and some pulmonary problem, but it's usually not as aggressive. But to answer your question, how do we treat it? Western medicine is very hopeless when it comes to lupus. Only thing I know that has ever been taught is steroids. And I want everybody to know steroids are not a cure. It is simply palliative, meaning it makes you feel better, but steroids can be just as harmful as the disease itself. It causes brittle bones, it causes diabetes to be worse. Some people will gain 30 to 40 pounds, and it can ruin your hormone balance. So to answer your question, lupus is a horrible condition thought to be autoimmune, but Western medicine is very poor at doing a good job of working with the patient.
Thank you.
Dr. Bowles, thank you very much. And oh my goodness, would you just give, because of time, just give the titles of the books that folks can access by you on Amazon, etc.
Salutary Action is the book if you're interested in getting more information on pharmaceuticals and Black American health. Salutary Action.
Okay, and you can stay online, but we're not asking you a question now. We're just going to go to the panel in terms of what you have gained from being active with the wisdom table.
Well, I've really enjoyed being on the wisdom table, and I've learned a lot. And I've learned a lot from my peers. I've learned a lot from those individuals like Dr. Bowles. And I think it's important that we share this not just with our adult community, but with the children also. I think ideas about taking care of yourself and using the old remedies, which in some instances are not that old, I think it's really would make for a good part of our curriculum in the schools. Don't you agree with me, brother? Okay.
I've learned between my grandmother and you to watch the doctors of now, because half of them don't even know what they're doing. Thank you very much.
Well, I also learned a lot from the wisdom table, because some of this stuff that I learned, I didn't have a clue. Like, for instance, the diseases of now, of today's diseases, back in the, I guess, 20s, 30s, or whatever, they didn't, black people didn't have money to go to call a doctor, say, look, come out here, my baby is sick, blah, blah, blah. So I learned that they used a lot of old-fashioned stuff, but even it worked, but it just was old-fashioned. And that was roots in the ground from trees, grass, and different things that cure diseases. Today is a whole different ball game. Aspirin costs you $7, when back then you could use some of this stuff and it probably worked better. And I learned a lot from everybody on this panel, and I want to give a shout out to you, Dr. Bowles, for being so nice and taking enough time out to answer all our questions, no matter what the subject was.
Sister Shirley?
Dr. Bowles, I want to say, I learned quite a bit, even from making a cake to a snake bite,
Yeah.
everything. And I just want to thank you for all of that.
From my perspective, having been brought in by the Digital Divide Partners, the focus is that the Digital Divide Partners and myself, someone brought in, is that when you look at youth, when you look at the unemployed, when you look at the casualties of war, those individuals that you wouldn't even want to be near, when you look at the elders, the seniors, you're looking at untapped resource. So this panel, they're commenting on Dr. Bowles, but they have grown and developed to the point where they can do their own show. And that's not looked upon in America, senior citizens doing their own show, but they are capable of doing it, and we have found them in a housing development. So thank you, Dr. Bowles, and thank you, Digital Divide Partners.
Okay, thank you, Brother Leroy. Thank you to the Wisdom Table, and thank you, Dr. Velva Bowles.